a buyer, a seller, or a balanced market, it's all good for us from the standpoint that we can operate in all three as long as you know how to operate in all three. Buyers can succeed in sellers market, sellers can succeed in buyers market, and buyers and sellers can succeed in both. It's understanding, the waves and what's happening from the inventory perspective.
Welcome to the Prime People Podcast, where we cover all things that got us to where we are today, our team building strategies, the marketing and sales tips that we've learned through thousands of transactions, productivity tips, ways to really just hold yourself accountable to accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and all things content creation, personal development, and not to mention we have some of the best guests on the planet.
Ray Allen, man, we are fired up to have you as today's guest on the Prime People Podcast. For a little bit of context, Ray and I have literally spent, I think at this point, hundreds of hours together on Clubhouse jamming. One reason that I brought him on the podcast was he's really one of those innovators. I've listened to him speak, and one thing about speaking, especially on an audio application like Clubhouse, you can't hide, right? Like you can say the same thing over and over and over and over, but a guy like Ray, I'm seeing how he's looking at the world. I've gotten into a lot of his rooms and onto his actual podcast when he does the Bearded Men of Real Estate, and listening to how he ideates and how he understands that the industry is shifting one way or another, and how he's not just a real estate agent, right? Like we're having a conversation today around, is the real estate market going to crash? Yeah, that's the overarching conversation that started this. But I also know he's not the guy to just say, no, it's going to be amazing forever, because he's an agent. He's open to a discourse, agreeing, disagreeing. And to me, that's one of the most valuable assets I have in the world, is friends that are willing to converse about topics that are sometimes a difficult discussion. A little bit of context. And early on in his career, he actually negotiated or was responsible for marketing close to $50 million of real estate in his first year. Now he owns multiple offices. I know he's a certified CrossFit coach, teaches early mornings. I hear that all the time. He's a baker. He is into lifestyle photography like you've never seen. And his Bearded Men of Real Estate podcast is one of the best in the industry. And I just learned recently that his live reaction videos to Apple keynotes are incredible. Great.
Man.
So good. So why don't you tell my guests and the people that are on my platform kind of who you are, what your origin story, and kind of how you even ended up here.
Man, that was pretty good. I mean, that was it. I started in real estate in 2006, and I was an assistant to a whole bunch of real estate agents in Northwest Arkansas. And I helped them. I totaled it up towards the end of the year, and I was like, I've marketed 49 million in property for other people. I should probably get my real estate license. And so I got my real estate license, was licensed in January of 2007. And we had an amazing 4 or 5 months. And then it was like someone just turned off the faucet, right? And then in 08, the crash, 09, weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I became a business broker out of that, because I had a real estate license and my real estate business wasn't going so hot through that period. So I could sell the business and also the commercial property attached to it. So I became a business broker. I wound up owning a couple of businesses, owning a couple of ventures with family. And long story short, wanted to get back into real estate. So I restarted in 2013 and have just never looked back. So at that time, I know we had like a month and a half in savings, and I was going full time into real estate. My wife was like, are you sure you want to do this? It's 100% commission. And I'd promised her she wouldn't have to work. If she gave me like the first 5 years of helping to be the breadwinner, she'd never have to work again. And so she was at home with the kids. And I said, yeah, I'm sure. She said, how are you sure? I said, well, honey, there are people in this town who are terrible agents, but they make a living for them and their family. Can we agree that I'm not terrible? And she said, yeah. I said, okay, then I think we'll be okay. And so from then on, I started like journaling every transaction. What went well? Why was this a fantastic experience for them? And why was this one a fantastic failure? What could I have done different? What could I have said different? How could I have prepared them? What was the process like in my communication? And I created a pretty good system for buyers and sellers to have a pretty good experience with me. And after about 2.5 years, I looked up and I was kind of leading some of the market. I wasn't a top agent, but I was up there faster than like a 2-year normal agent would be. So I thought, well, I should start telling people that I'm okay at this job. So I started marketing. I kind of put the same attention to detail. What ads were working, what ads weren't working. And very quickly, we got kind of vaulted into the spotlight for some of the stuff we were doing for both our buyers and sellers. Mainly at that time, it was all about listing marketing because it was a buyer's market. Mm-hmm. And I get to speak at conferences and kind of teach other people what we were doing, how we were using retargeting. how we're using Facebook ads and the data and algorithms and all that stuff to help get our content out there in front of the people that could make the purchase. So from that, it launched our brokerage in 2018, where we are built more like a media company than we are a real estate brokerage. And I said on stage back in 2017 that in the future, we're not just going to be real estate agents. We're going to be media companies that focus on real estate and our community. And that's essentially what we built. So we want, as a brokerage, our goal is to help our agents to market those properties and to help our agents market the community and get in front. But as a whole, as a brokerage helping the community, we want to make the process so much better for both buyers and sellers, because I think that's the key to surviving long-term. And we've talked about this in Clubhouse rooms too before, but there's a lot of algorithms and computer programs and giants out there that are looking to create a streamlined system for buying and selling houses. And everyone thinks that's going to replace the agent. Well, it's not going to replace the agent any more than a nice restaurant has been replaced by McDonald's, right? You could go to McDonald's and get a streamline, what you're going to get no matter where in the world you are. It's going to be consistent product every single time, very nice and streamlined. Or you can get an incredible experience that may even make you more money, should make you more money, and just have an unbelievable customer service experience throughout the process and get taken care of. And I think that's where we as real estate agents have to go. So it's kind of the long story short, I guess.
Yeah, and that gives my audience an understanding of where this conversation is going to go. I think people think, oh, we're so protective of real estate. I mean, truthfully, like you and I agree on so many conversations, we happen to be in the business of real estate, but if you were going to turn around and start baking or doing your CrossFit as your primary business, you could essentially take the same skill set that you've developed in real estate, apply it to that, and likely find massive success. We're all salespeople in different regards. We just happen to be in the business of real estate. And you identified something, that I've been saying a lot lately, and that's the tech companies are actually going to help us. Like, bring it on. The Zillows of the world and the House Sigmas and everything else. To me, they're a good thing. I'm the only agent in my market saying that, but to me, it's going to make it faster for me to have conversations with clients and easier for me to stand out, because those companies don't have the ability to do the hand-to-hand combat that we do. But let's jump right into it. I want to kick it off and just drop that bomb that we dropped, or the title of the episode anyways. My question to you: is the real estate market going to explode? I know that is a very loaded question, but I know a lot of people are concerned with the state of affairs right now. You can go as deep into this conversation as you want, but what's your 30,000 foot view?
So explode in which direction? Downward, I guess, because that's kind of what gets the headlines, right? Is the bubble gonna pop? That's kind of what we talked about yesterday on the Bearded Minute Real Estate Show. The reason why we brought it up on our show is because the same guy that was shorting the subprime during, that's why I called The Big Short, if y'all seen that movie, he predicted that the bubble would pop. And that was the headline. It was all the rage. But when you look at what he said, there weren't a lot of reasons that he gave other than there seems to be a lot of liquidity in the market that is leading to allow people to put in offers that are kind of unheard of, closing appraisal gaps, doing full cash offers and bidding out traditional financing because of liquidity. People have cash. And his reasoning was the market is primarily driven 80% by the people that have cash and only 20% by what he called the fundamentals. And that's a good point, but I don't see a scenario, and I've replayed a bunch of scenarios, and there's really only one that sticks out in my head that could lead to a massive real estate market crash. What I foresee happening is that we'll see headlines that'll be doom and gloom, and they'll say home price gains slow. Well, they're still gaining, right? The reality is there's only been 2 recessions in the history of recessions throughout the US in which home prices have lost money. One of them, they lost negative 1.9%. And the other recession, they lost negative 19%. I'll let you guess when that was. Every other recession that we've had since they've been tracking it, home prices have actually gone up anywhere from 2 to 6%. So I think even if we were to be vaulted into another recession, homes would actually be one of the safe havens for investment and not one of the things that everything's crashing around it. In part because so many people are purchasing with cash, that means there's less debt involved in people's homes in the future. So if people did get in trouble, they have equity built into their home. Would they get every dime out of it in a dire situation that they put into it to pay for the home? No, but they would still get a lot of equity out of it. We were talking about reports last year that there was over $2 trillion in US of equity sitting in people's homes. And so even in a dire, like think the most dire situation, everyone currently in forbearance forecloses, right? So suddenly banks are holding all of these houses and can't continue to give loans. Well, a lot of the people they're giving loans to aren't able to make purchases anyway right now. But let's say that now they can't give any loans because they're holding all these properties. They have to put the properties on the market. That's going to be a huge relief to the inventory issue that we're seeing now. So in what scenario could we see a massive crash that doesn't also put more homes on the market and allows buyers to buy? You'd have to have a scenario in which all of the buyers right now are so frustrated with not getting their FHA offer accepted or government loan offer accepted that they sign 12-month lease agreements. Then massive panic, sellers throw their home on the market, and you have a massive amount of inventory coming on the market. And in those two scenarios, you have people with a ton of inventory and people that now can no longer make a purchase. So there's way fewer buyers, there's way more inventory, and it happens overnight or really close to it. That's a scenario in which I don't think it would be a crash. I think you would just see people start to lose. They thought they were going to make 50,000 when they listed, but they may only sell it for what they bought it for last year. That's a normal market.
Yeah.
Right. You normally can't sell a house for 50 to 90 to 100,000 over what you bought it for a year ago. Normally you have to wait 3 to 5 years. And you can sell your house and make more money out of it than the fees because you have the appreciation over time of, usually somewhere around 3%. So it's just very difficult for me to think of a scenario in which we all crash, but it doesn't also help the inventory situation. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I do think that brings up the point that I was saying earlier. In our industry, whether it's a buyer, a seller, or a balanced market, it's all good for us from the standpoint that we can operate in all three as long as you know how to operate in all three. Buyers can succeed in sellers market, sellers can succeed in buyers market, and buyers and sellers can succeed in both. It's understanding, the waves and what's happening from the inventory perspective of when the consultant's approach to what we do really kicks in. And I was very interested in the conversation yesterday because I do think it's important to discuss where the news is coming from, right? Like, I mean, the news itself is a cesspool sometimes in terms of information and what they're giving. And you mentioned it earlier, they're saying, oh, home prices only went up by this much. It's a negative headline. It's actually still positive news. And it's so skewed. And I've always been one to advocate that the news you're getting typically is like 60 days older than we're getting it because we do a transaction, but that transaction doesn't hit the actual stats till maybe 30 days after we do the transaction. If not 60, then the news picks it up, prints the story. So you're like 60 days into the news cycle, working with old data and just being very reactive. How do you think people make mistakes one way or the other, reacting emotionally to news, i.e. headline comes out saying, never been a better time to sell your house. Every seller in the market reads it, overprices their home, and then all of a sudden they don't see what they thought they were going to see.
Yeah. The biggest mistake I think people make that are just brushing through the headlines is that they are missing what it means to be an expert. So whenever you read the news headlines and they're talking about the real estate industry, if you're a real estate agent watching this, you should already know what they're going to say. You should be the one that the reporter could call and say, tell me about the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be the one that references the news and say, well, I had no idea it was such a seller's market. I'm going to share this with my friends and family.
Do you know anybody looking to buy or sell a home?
Buy, sell, or invest, call me. No, if you're doing that, you're already too late. And you have to evaluate yourself on what are you doing for your own professional development. There's the old saying about the 5 jobs as a real estate agent: lead generation, lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts. And a lot of people say scripts and role play. But in our company, we've changed it. Instead of just scripts and role play, we call it professional development. And part of that professional development is consuming something that helps you become an expert in your marketplace and helps you master the craft. For instance, maybe it is checking out the headlines, but also diving a little deeper to see what those actual stats are. Mm-hmm. So when they say that there was a 1% drop in mortgage applications this week and how bad and what that can mean for the economy, going a little bit deeper and then seeing that the mortgage applications to purchase were actually 5%. What they were talking about is the total refi and mortgage applications. And if you look at this number compared to last year, it's still 57% higher than it was last year. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things we keep referencing on the show is last year we had this huge dip in the number of showings. So we should see more people applying for a home loan right now than last year. So just knowing what's going on will help you put your clients in the best possible position so that when they come to you with the headlines and say, man, have you seen these headlines? Agents are making a killing because it's a seller's market. You could say, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean agents are making a killing? Listing agents? Buyer agents? Agents that work with investors? Who are you talking about? And then you can educate them a little bit more on what's happening in the market. We had one of our clients told their agent, which is one of our agents, they said, with this being a buyer's market, and she said, what? So she made a video, and it started the video. She starts the video by saying that, I had a buyer the other day tell me, with this being a buyer's market, and then she goes, and with that, I want to tell you what the market does. So she's going to be doing an educational video on what it means to have a seller's market, what it means to have a buyer's market, the months in inventory, absorption rates, and how all that stuff happens. So as real estate experts, we should be the ones that the news organizations are calling us and asking us about the market. We shouldn't be reacting to the news headlines as if we've never seen them before or thought about it.
I love that. And Matt LaMarche is in the chat, said he had no idea you were a historian as well, too. Maybe we'll pull him on at the end so you can roast him about that at the same time. You hit a key point that I was going to ask you about later on, but let's talk about it now. You said real estate expert, right?
Yeah.
So there's a transfer in this world happening right now where you can hire a real estate agent or you can hire a real estate expert. What do you think the difference is between those two things?
So I think an agent is going to be the streamlined McDonald's experience. If they have their stuff together, honestly. I mean, if you're just now looking in real estate saying, well, how can I make this transaction smoother for my buyer? You're already years behind. You have to make this transaction smooth, but not only do you have to make it smooth, you have to be the expert throughout the transaction. Whether it's if you're a new agent, pull in brokers, pull in people from your company who already know what's going on, that can help you with the consultation, that can help you show the value in your expertise. If you're brand new and you're trying to do a video about being a real estate expert and what it means to go into escrow and under contract and all this other stuff, but you really don't know all that you're talking about, take a break, learn what you're talking about, and become an expert in the area. You already know where the cool spots to eat are, where you can get some coffee, the neighborhoods that everyone wants to live in. So you can still be a real estate expert in that area as you're learning to master your craft as a newer agent. Now, what we look at as the craft mastery is having systems and processes in place to where you can service your clients and still have a life, and that you can continue to gain the real estate knowledge and expertise that it requires in order to inform and guide your clients through the process. No one wants a hero. They want to be the hero and they want you to be their guide, right? Let them be Luke Skywalker and Yoda we will be. Is that right?
Yeah. No, that works. You brought me back to the clubhouse room where we all changed our photos to Star Wars characters. I feel like that's going to come back this week at some point.
Yes. So I think that's really what it means to be an expert, is having the knowledge and expertise, or knowing who you can bring in to help in those scenarios. And also being so confident and aware of what's happening in the contracts and what's going on in your local community. If you do that, a robot can't make that smooth.
And I think the relational aspect of it is literally everything. I was speaking with a developer this morning and a very smart investor, just about the access to information. And their time's as valuable as anybody else's. And I think our role is changing to save them time, save their phone from ringing from, say you're a builder, the buyers are going to ask you 47 questions as an agent that's working with new home construction buyers or luxury buyers. I'm listening to everything they're telling me, trying to figure out what their pain points are and what their speed bumps are, smoothing them out so that by the time they get to the builder or the seller, they're a non-issue and they can just do business, right? It is right. The white glove concierge service that you've explained on Rooms before and on your podcast. I think when we were jamming on Practical and Tactical, you said that it's literally like you're almost at the Four Seasons and Ray's just there with his white glove ready to help fulfill all of your needs. And I don't care if you want to buy an e-bike, you want to go for coffee, or you want to buy a $3 million house. Ultimately, you just want to be that person by their side, right?
Yeah, the ultimate connector.
Yeah, you're like the Alfred of real estate if everybody was Batman, right?
That's right.
I love it. That's awesome. No, you know what? You're one of the most real dudes I think I've ever met. And the levity that you bring to the conversation really stands out. And the way that you're thinking about the transition of what it means to be a real estate agent it's impacting me and how I'm going through things. I think a lot of people maybe that don't understand what Clubhouse is, they don't get that guys like you and I are sitting there taking down piles of notes. And then how do you turn around and implement those? Because we're doing it, but I know you're doing things. I see you doing it. What does it look like for you to take an idea, that you're becoming the market expert or something that you see being a possibility and actually implementing that in your business?
It's been so fun. So we only have like 3 offices right now. And at those offices, I think we have a total of like 39 or so agents, right? And most of them are not on Clubhouse. And I keep sharing, we have this Slack channel of like stuff to learn. I just keep like, hey guys, here's something, here's something, here's something. But for every like one little thing I'm sharing with them, and for every one little thing that I'm starting to implement, I feel like there's all this stuff that's over here, right? That we're working on or looking into, and I literally I'll show you. I'm not going to show you the details because, I can't give away everything, but like, here's just a pile of notes from the other day, right?
I love it.
I literally keep these notes and then I go back and say, okay, what is easy to implement that would make the biggest difference? Because there's a lot of great ideas, but some of these are going to be very difficult to implement. We've got a bunch of stuff to change to implement it. We've got to change something in our system. We have to reshoot something, change something on our website, change something in how we lead gen. But is there anything that I could pick up today that I could implement without making a huge change? And that's the stuff that I like to pop off fast. Mm-hmm. I kind of got that idea from the 2-minute rule. It's not exactly the same idea, but if whatever you could do in 2 minutes, just do that thing. And that's kind of the same philosophy. Like, what can I implement that's not going to be a massive change, but that'll escalate growth, that'll elevate what we're doing. And then the bigger projects are just kind of brewing. And I have this Asana. We recently moved to Asana. And so we're starting to use that for all these projects that are brewing and some of what we have. And we're things that we're having to investigate and figure out long term. That's all there. And what's neat for me is that these things that we can do, Jim Rohn was a business philosopher. Love that guy. He spoke to a conference, and my dad bought the CDs of the weekend seminar. And I think I was 14. And I listened to the weekend seminar, changed my life. And then from then, every year I listened to the weekend seminar. And one of the things he talks about is working for a skill is often more valuable than working for money. And some of the things that we try to implement don't work, and it's not any good for us. It just is not a fit. But the things that we learned in attempting to implement it or investigating that idea or diving deep into it pay huge dividends with this other thing that we're thinking about doing over here. And that's one of the real cool benefits that's happening as far as my own professional development and personal growth is being able to see the difference. Like, I'm different than what I was in January when I downloaded the app. Would I be as different had I not had those sessions with you guys and talking and brainstorming and Jim Rohn calls it bread for the head, right? Had I not done that, where would I be today? Well, there's bookloads of ideas that I wouldn't have had, ideas that I wouldn't have investigated, that wouldn't have led to other things that we're now looking at. So that's one of the coolest things is looking at what can I implement now? What are projects that we're going to dive into? The failed projects are still providing so much knowledge and information to us that they're valuable in themselves. So it's been a ride, man.
In my brain, I'm literally picturing you baking, cooking, and you're having all these different ingredients and you're working on 7 different things at the same time. And you're taking stuff from this. You're like, that might taste good with this, and putting in different baskets and pots and pans. But that's the beauty of it, right? I think people that are in a leadership position, and I love for everybody to hear this, often the people that aren't in the position don't understand that a lot of the things that are being tried and implemented, there is a rhyme and reason. There may not seem like it at the time, and you're throwing a million things at the wall to see what sticks, but because you're not afraid to throw those things at the wall, that is what's leading to massive growth. You were in that room with me actually in Forbes Business School. Yep. We were ideating about our business model, and that conversation changed the last 60 days of my life. I thought about, well, the vertical integration, the horizontal integration, What does that mean for these businesses? Yeah, I do have these businesses built into my business, but they're just not looked at as independent. We separated them. We did 2 new hires. They're starting on Monday. We don't necessarily have everything figured out. Got a lot of work for them to do and a lot of things that we're doing internally that we're now going to portion out. But without trying these new things, we can't grow those businesses. If I'm like, all right, we're going to spend a week organizing how we're going to do this one little thing and make it super perfect, well, we're overlooking the 19 other things that we could try to get to the overarching vision of what that business is. And I think that's where you're really standing out. I think Pixel Properties, you're poised for growth. And I think if I was in your market, you'd definitely be on my radar from the sense that you're thinking a lot bigger than transactional business or even just servicing and providing the smooth white glove service. Like, you do have a grasp of that. I feel like you're working on something bigger. What is your moonshot? Like, what is that thing that may not be something you think you can accomplish today, but you're striving for in the future?
So that goes back to the conversation that I had with my wife about should we open our own brokerage or not. So a lot of people don't know this, but I was let go from my previous brokerage because they came to me and said, we no longer want to continue with you. And I said, why? And they said, you're not a culture match. I said, why? And they said, well, we think that you're going to start your own company and we don't want you to do that while you're here. So I said, okay. So I took their advice and started our own company. But in that period of thinking, well, do I just want to go and work with someone else, work with another brokerage, be a great agent, or do I want to launch? I felt like I had like 3 or 4 options. One option was be a good agent and make a lot of money, solo agent, do well, dominate market, and not have a huge team or anything, but be really good at what I do and make a lot of money. Or I could be an agent with a pretty big team, right? And then kind of dominate the market plus a little bit. And it would be a lot of training, a lot more activity. There'd be a lot more going on, but I'd make more money in that scenario than I would just being a solo agent. But I'd also have maybe a little less time depending on how it was all set up and who I was training and what was happening. And someone doesn't come in that week and now you have to cover and all this other stuff happens. It's a business. Or I could start a brokerage and maybe have a couple of locations here and there in a regional brokerage that would do pretty well and maybe be built like a media company. Or number 4 was start a worldwide real estate brokerage. And I was thinking, okay, if I was on my deathbed, right, taking my last breath, thinking about everything that happened in life, what decision would I regret more not trying? And I would regret not trying number 4. I think I could do number 1. I think I could do number 2. I think I could do number 3. I have no idea if I could do number 4, but I know that in the last days, I would regret not ever trying. So the moonshot for us is creating a worldwide real estate brokerage, creating a brand that comes beside agents who are already focused and doing some of the things that we want to do, but helping them develop that more, taking some of the load off so that they can focus more on servicing the clients, creating that incredible experience, full concierge. And if we did that, then I felt like we could compete with Keller Williams and Century 21 and, Coldwell Banker and all those big companies that are kind of dominating the industry right now. And that's our moonshot. And as a matter of fact, about a year after we opened, someone offered to buy us. And they sent someone down and they were talking to us about this. And they were like, yeah, we want to buy you. And here's how we'll integrate you into what we're doing, all this stuff. I'm like, okay. And I wasn't really into it. And they said, well, do you have a number in your mind? I'm like, yeah, I got a number, but I don't think you guys are going to pay the number. And they're like, well, the guy was like, is there any way possible that we could work in the future together? And I said, yeah. And he said, what is that? I said, I think if I buy you guys. And he went, ha ha. And then he realized I was dead serious. And he gave me his card and he said, if that does happen, I'd like for you to remember me. and it was like, I think he probably went back to his home office and said, look, it was a goldfish telling a whale, I'm going to eat you one day. But that's kind of how we feel. Yeah. It's possible. And that's the moonshot. So that's the thing where, that may take most of my life to figure out. And that may take most of my life to get to that moonshot. And, if somebody gave me a couple of $1 billion, I would probably do a different plan. But currently, currently, that's the moonshot that we're looking at. I really want to help these agents to be able to service their clients, service their customers, have more time with their family, have more time with their friends, get more by referral, by staying in front of their contacts, being a media company. But I don't think they should have to develop all that stuff on their own. And
Yeah,
that's what we want to do.
I agree with you 1,000%. Apologize for cutting you off, but what you said, aside from you getting a couple $1 billion and creating a CrossFit box combined with a kitchen so you can bake and do CrossFit at the same time,
Yeah.
this is why we align so well, right? And it actually leads into the next part of the conversation. But what you said is exactly what's happened with us, right? We've had 2 offers to purchase what we have, and I had those exact conversations with people, and it seems crazy at the time. But the journey is really where the best part of this whole thing is, right? Of you really finding yourself and the fact that you love the journey, you love digging in, trying different things. And that's not necessarily what everybody wants. Like there's a little bit of crazy in the 2 of us that it takes to do what we do and be that enthusiastic about trying all these things and trying learning these skill sets that you hit the nail on the head. A lot of the agents that work within the industry, I've said to our team, their job is a vehicle to relationships, and they're likely going to have success and wealth generated from those relationships that aren't even related to real estate and are a result of the work that they do. But the role of brokerage is changing in terms of partnership with people and independence within people, where even the individuals, the collectives, the staff, the admins, the media people that work with you, they're all independent. They're building their own skill sets. Yes, they work within your organization, but it's all about the culture of what you're building. And are you bringing people together that are better together as a collective than they are separately? And if not, that's okay. There's no emotions left of it versus the experience that you had when you left your brokerage. And I had the exact same experience where, the nastiness of it and the top-down perspective of the industry was, no, you work for me. If you're going to outshine me, that's not going to happen. It's the opposite. I bet you when you're talking to your agents and internally, you want them to do better than you, to the point where you're giving away all your best secrets and hoping that they do it. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I had coffee with someone this morning that I love what she's doing at her brokerage. She's phenomenal. She just doesn't ask me to help her enough. And I'm basically saying, how can I help you? Yeah. What do you need? Could I buy you something? Like, what can I do to help you?
Do you need a book or
right? And that's really where my heart is. It's not building a brokerage that the agent works for the broker and serves the broker. It's building a brokerage in which the brokerage services the agent. And we encourage our agents to look at our brokerage as a line item expense. Yeah. There's a lot of brokerages that will tell you your GCI after you pay the brokerage. Right? Oh, here's your GCI for the year. Well done. But they already take out what they take as a brokerage. What we like to do is say, hey, here's your top line GCI. Here's how much you paid your broker. Was it worth it? Because then that holds us accountable. Mm-hmm. Every agent should be looking at their numbers like that.
Oh, they are.
There's a trade of value there. And if you're not looking at that number and saying, could I get everything that my brokerage is providing me? Could I take that number, cut it in half or cut it by thirds or do something, and then get everything that my broker is already getting me? If you're not looking at that number like that, then you're not actually running a business. You're working for your broker.
And if you're a broker and you're not looking at your agents like that, then you got people like Ray and myself that are changing the way things are being done. And, we literally look at the net, and I've made the agreement with my agents when they sign on that, if I'm not providing more value in the relationship, I don't want you, honestly. Like, the amount of referrals we give our agents needs to net out to more than they're providing us in terms of their personal splits or the value prop that we're giving them in terms of everything that you said. Streamlining the systems, the process, the accountability, the training has to be a net positive, where they wouldn't have succeeded to that level if they weren't part of the organization, or they should be on their own. And I would encourage them to do that. But it's a different way of looking at it for sure. Because I know a lot of times it's just, well, where can I go that I get the cheapest splits and, make my cap super early and then keep 100%, but you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're doing that, across the board.
I totally agree. Yeah. And I think for a lot of agents out there, they should go ahead and take the brokerage class and then just launch out on their own little team broker. Like that was that third option, being a team. Yeah. You could just launch out after taking your broker's exam. You can have a little office somewhere. You create your own team. It's a whole team structured brokerage. Yeah. That's what most of the team should do, in my opinion, because a lot of them aren't taking advantage of whatever their broker's giving them, or they're not getting anything from being at that brokerage. So taking on those expenses themselves of the nothing they're getting, like if you're already having to brand yourself, buy your signs, hire videographers, hire photographers, figure out your Facebook marketing, posting, all that stuff, doing your transaction management, having assistants, then what are you at your brokerage for? Mm-hmm. Just get your broker's license, jump out, save the commission, and do all that yourself.
Yeah. And then the relationships and the networking and everything else too, right? You got to have some type of leadership at the top. And I always look for that in my referral partners, the people that I spend a lot of my time with. I look for leadership because it's the people I want to get around, because it's going to level me up, and it all trickles downhill. Last question that I have for you, actually, there was a comment from Andy. Andy's name in the Zoom is Andy T. Ray is the best. I thought it was Andy C is the best, but it's Andy C. Ray is the best. And he said he's glad you dressed up for the interview.
It's a sweatshirt,
Hey man, this is the new world we live in. Patrick O'Dwyer says, we're seeing properties selling for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands over asking. I can't see these values are sustainable. How are banks allowing people to obtain mortgages on these inflated prices? So what's your answer to that question?
So it's crazy to us who've been in the market a long time, but it's not crazy to buyers that have been watching the market for a year. They want the house. Yeah. And somebody posted a question like, isn't it irresponsible for a real estate agent to allow your buyer to buy and close the appraisal gaps? Like, I don't manage my clients' lives. I acquire and help them acquire the property they want to acquire. And if they want to pay $100,000 over where it's currently listed, because that's where they want to spend their life, then who am I to say, no, that's too inflated. You should wait a couple more years and stay right where you are. No. The agent that says that may be responsible for the divorce down the road because they needed additional space. So no, I'm going to let my buyers make the decision that they want. And if they want to pay that much, I'm going to inform them of the current market value. I'm going to show them the trends that are happening. I think we all know it's not going to be like this forever. I think even the buyers that are paying that know it's not going to be like this forever. But that's where they want to live now. And if they want to make that decision, they're more than welcome to, especially if they have the liquidity to do it. I mean, they're basically investing in an asset that will probably continue to go up over the long term anyway.
And truthfully, you and I both know this, the consumers may not. List price doesn't mean anything. 10,000 over maybe means they undersold it by 40 grand. 100 grand over asking price maybe is exactly what it's worth. Truthfully, like the price that it sells for depends on their pricing strategy, the buyers in the marketplace, and how that deal was negotiated, correct?
Yeah. And let's flip the script a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, were these same agents who are saying, are you really going to let your client pay $50,000 over? 3 years ago, were you really letting your client pay list price? Because 3 years ago, you shouldn't have. 3 years ago, you should have gotten all kinds of concessions. 3 years ago, you should have gotten, $15,000, $20,000 off. And so weren't you irresponsible at that time for allowing them to pay what the seller was asking?
Yeah, it comes down to the whole conversation, brother, about being an expert and, being confident in your expertise and not over promising or under delivering. You're an absolute beauty. I'm going to ask you one more question, actually, before I get you two more questions. One is the collaboration over competition aspect of it, right? Because truthfully, you could say that we're direct competitors from the standpoint that we're both tracking in the exact same line. We're looking to create global real estate brands. So is another friend of mine, Ryan Serhant. And, we all collaborate. We share our secrets. How do you view collaboration over competition? Because I know it makes us better, but I want everybody out there to know why it makes us better.
So here's the funny thing about a lot of collaboration. There's a few people who actually do it. So I stood on stage in 2017 and said, hey guys, here's everything we're doing. And maybe 10% of that audience actually did something with the information. So a lot of the collaboration in our industry is just showing what options there are. And there's a very small percentage of them who are going to take it and actually do it. Now, collaboration among close-knit circles is very different, because with that collaboration, you also have some accountability. Mm-hmm. Hey, Justin, I'm going to share this idea with you. I would like to know from you how it worked in your marketplace, how it worked with your agents. And so you get the free idea, I get the free data, right? And so we're exchanging ideas, and we're also exchanging how those ideas work. I'm in a lot in the Tom Ferry organization, and there'll be a text or something that some people are testing. And they're like, hey, test this out. This has worked for me. Here are the stats. I text this to 50 people and converted 3 people from it. And so, all that kind of collaboration, especially when you're not in the same market, is fantastic. Collaboration within that market is difficult, because that's when people will look at you and say, well, I'm going to find out from him everything he does, and I'm just going to do those things and rip off and duplicate. Mm-hmm. What's funny is the more I do locally in the marketplace, the more my friends, the more my sphere, the more people that I don't know are sending me stuff saying, hey, this guy's copying you. Does that bother you? No, because it's like a free ad for me every time. Yeah. Everyone knows I'm already doing it. When I was first starting to create, it really bugged me. But then I think it was John Maxwell. He gives away a lot of his secrets and sometimes gives away entire books. And he goes and speaks, and he basically gives you all the information in the book. And someone asked him, like, aren't you worried that this information that you're going to give, you're not charging for some course or anything like that? Aren't you worried that somebody's just going to take this information, regurgitate it, kind of steal this, or that it won't be of use in the future? And he said, no, because he doesn't plan to stop having ideas. He plans to always be having better ideas, improving people's communication, improving people's way to lead. And for me, I plan to always be on the cutting edge of what's happening next, and taking a look at how marketers are taking a tool and using it in other industries, and then how we as real estate agents might be able to use that tool. And then when that tool gets old and it doesn't work anymore, when everyone logs off Facebook, what's next? Right? Where's the thing? Where are the eyeballs? What are people going to use? What are people going to do? Whenever we have increased competition at 1% real estate fees, because you can click a button and sell it on this computer, then what's the next step for us? And that's the fun part for me. Mm-hmm. I don't think every agent should feel like that. I think some leaders should feel like that, who own brokerages, who will then help those agents do those things. For the most part, agents just need to focus on the customer service and the relationship.
I absolutely love that, brother. That's a great way to wrap it up too. And I think you said something key that I am going to repeat so everybody gets it. It can be agents, it can be people in the marketplace. You can look at somebody and understand where they are today, maybe get a snapshot of what they're doing to market to get better, to learn and whatnot too. But Ray is going to be a very different person a year from now. I plan on being a completely different person a year from now. So I think that's where the value lies from leadership at your brokerage. And what I'm trying to do at mine is, you may learn everything I know now, but catch me in a year, it's going to be a vastly different story. I bet you're already thinking about AR, VR, and NFT technology in real estate, as am I. We can talk about that another day. But if I'm going to drive everybody to one place so they can follow you, show you some love, interact, we have so many messages in the chat here, where am I sending them, Ray, to come link up with you?
Do Instagram. It's Ray, Rayzorback. So I'm from Arkansas. I went to the University of Arkansas, where we have the Razorbacks. So it's easy to remember. It's Rayzorback. So connect with me there for sure.
And I will send everybody to see you, and I'll catch you in the lounge later, Ray. I appreciate you so much, brother.
Yeah, man. You too. This was fun. Thanks.
Awesome. See you, dude. Good luck with the Transformer.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.